Before we get to our episode, I want to take a moment to tell you about a platform that is revolutionizing the way SMP artists market their clinics, and best of all, you don't need to spend money on ads to use it. The platform is called HighLead, and it's a complete sales and marketing system created by an SMP artist that is guaranteed to generate more bookings for your clinic. HighLead helps you capture, nurture, and close more business with dozens of features, including your own website chat widget, a unified text message, phone, and email marketing system, a review management system, helpful automations, and so much more. And beyond that, HighLead's team gives you one-on-one sales and marketing training, step-by-step onboarding calls, and responsive support. If you're ready to fill your pipeline with quality SMP leads, check out HighLead right now at gohighlead.com. You can get access to a 20-minute overview video to see behind the scenes or book a live one-on-one demo with the founder to get all your questions answered with absolutely no risk or obligations. Check out gohighlead.com today. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Scalp Solutions podcast. I am your host, David Santiago, and today we're bringing in an OG in the game. All right, behind the scenes, we were deciding on what topics to discuss, and we came up with about a 2-page long list. Just kidding, guys. Just kidding. But my guest today has a wealth of information, and we're gonna go into a particular technique that she has innovated and how we can utilize this in our SMP studios. And we're also going to dive into color pigments, hot topic. We're going to go into safety protocols, hot topic, and hopefully I can squeeze out some tips and tricks out of her. So let's welcome onto the show, Shauna Magrath, CPCP.
Thank you, David. So great to be here with you. I've watched many of your episodes and they are fantastic. You are doing such a great service for our industry, bringing awareness and knowledge to the masses. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much for taking out some time out of your busy schedule to jump out of the podcast. And we have a lot to discuss today. And we got about 45 minutes to make it happen, but I could already foresee maybe a part 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6. But you have quite a track record, Shauna, in this industry, and you're considered a pioneer in the industry. Can you tell us how long you've been doing SMP and what made you go down this path?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started doing cosmetic tattooing in 2008 when I opened my studio in Vancouver. And in 2009, I had a gentleman come in who had been wearing hair pieces, and he asked if I could do tattooing, hair follicle tattooing. And I thought, well, why not? I've never heard of it. I've never seen it. But I thought, hey, why not? I just have to match the skin and put in some dots. It's got to be super easy. So he came in, and sure enough, I, did what I thought was going to be absolutely magical. And it looked amazing in the beginning. And I thought, wow, this is a whole new world. And then I started researching more about it and found that there was a woman in Atlanta that was doing scalp micropigmentation. There was his hair clinic in England doing scalp micropigmentation. And there was this fellow over in Italy, Ennio Orso, doing scalp micropigmentation. And that was all I could find. The lady in Atlanta wasn't keen to talk with me. We chatted for a little bit, but she wouldn't share any information. She's just like learned through trial and error. I talked to his hair clinic. They wanted 40,000 euros to join their franchise at the time to learn what they were doing in one session. And then I contacted Ennio, but unfortunately he was only spoke Italian, and I didn't have the finances to go over there. His course was very expensive at the time. I think it was almost close to 10K. So I wasn't in that position. So I just continued to do what I did by applying the effects makeup background. So as an effects makeup artist, one of my specialties is doing bald caps. And I've did them on the 6th day and Freddie versus Jason, and you name them. I've had to put these bald caps on, and you speckle them all in with different layers and different levels of color. There's different textures, and it's all in order for the camera to read this fake bald head as real skin. So I just took the same principles that I had been doing and started applying them in that same type of layering process. So I would start with a taupey light gray and tap in that, let them come back in, and then I would increase it to a little bit darker and use a different needle size to create more speckling and variation. And so this is how my technique of layering was formed. And I started sharing it with Dr. Dixon in Las Vegas in 2012 was the first time she had me at her boot camp. And I shared this with a group of about 30 women that were doing it. And then she had me back again the next year on the AAM cruise. And that's when I met Stevie G. Taryn Quinteri was in one of the boot camps, so I met her first. I met Taryn first, so she was the first real SMP keener that I met at the time. And then when I went on the boat cruise to do my lecture with Tina Davies, that's when she just launched her microblading technique. It's so long ago now, wow. And Stevie was there, and he kept asking me all these questions, and I was like, who is that guy in the back there? Like, who is this dude, And it was quite funny. And that's how I met him. And I just continued to share my knowledge, going to Techs Helping Techs in LA. I went down to LA, to Anaheim. And so by sharing that knowledge, people had a better understanding that SMP can be done in sessions and should be done in sessions, not all in one go. And this is kind of how it came and was born. And now to see layering being the standard, oh my God, it warms my heart so much. And I know that there were people in the UK doing it, but I had no knowledge of them. I was just doing what I naturally, intuitively thought needed to be done in order to, resonate the color correctly in the skin. So this is where the multiple needles and the layering of color, starting from light to dark, has all come from, was my trial and error and sharing it with the world.
Outstanding. Well, I guess, you know what, from one to many other SMP artists, we appreciate you.
Oh, I'm so happy to see the work today. It makes me, I actually cry sometimes when I'm flipping through Instagram and I'm seeing these people and how beautiful the work is. And I'm just, it makes my heart sing.
And, this is great because it leads right on to the next question, because you've been around to experience a lot of changes from when you made your introductory to SMP. When you started, did you imagine that SMP would be at the state that it's currently in? And next question, two-parter, are you happy with it?
Yeah. I had no clue that SMP would become what it is today. I didn't think that, I knew the permanent makeup industry was going to be great. And I knew after like the 10th trademark infringement that I've had on Beauty Inc. that the PMU industry was going a little bonkers. Now I've had like 25 in Canada, and I can't even it's ridiculous. But the rest of the world is a whole another beast, but it's exciting. I knew when I started that this was the way of the future, but I think what it just needed that revival. It needed that resurgence and people doing it that really understood the concept of pigment and skin, so we didn't have those Sharpie eyebrows anymore. When I started doing color layering for my brows, and I would do brow correction and color layer, and this is how hybrid brow was created. I started layering my correction color, and then I would microblade over top with my secondary color and create this multi-dimensional brow where it had strokes up at the front and then shading at the back. And, back in the day, everybody told, oh, you can't do it. You can't do it. Well, you only can't do it until you prove you can do it. And that's the thing that I love the most about this industry, is that there's only a box if we set it there. As soon as we decide to open the box, the world is our oyster, and hence how, manual SMP has been formed, how I've created, gentle touch liner, the hybrid technique. All of these have all come out of necessity and innovation, where I just needed something that was going to work for the situation. So I created it.
Outstanding. You know, I'll be honest with you. Like your perspective is not what I imagine, and I don't know. I don't want that coming across like ignorant, but you're one of the pioneers in this industry, and I've from from what I've seen, most of the pioneers, like you guys, were just so set on one thing. Like this is what S&P is, and that is it. You don't do anything else, you don't do this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So to hear you that you were all for the change and you embrace it, it's, you know, go, okay. I just assumed you were one of the
No.
you were one of the gatekeepers. So
There's a lot of rumors that go around about me as well. I've come to learn in this industry. It's funny how people, instead of getting to know you, they'll make up dirt talk and they'll spread that instead of coming to the source and actually having a conversation with you
well,
about
that's a
it.
shame.
It's quite funny, but no, with doing the SMP this way, the way that I've learned and shared, I think it's just so branched to so much that we see today. The evolution of where we've come to is astronomical in the last 5 years. I mean, the needles have changed, the pigments have changed, the aftercares have changed, the anesthetics have changed, and everything, all the products, like the whole entire industry has changed from year to year to year, massive amounts of evolution. So it's super exciting.
So now I understand you were part of the evolution and you were all for it. Do you feel like at some point though that there's a limit to the innovativeness of what's
Yes.
happening with
Yeah,
as far as what
I do.
techniques?
So I do hair stroke microblading. I am one of the hair stroke microbladers. I do it. I have done it successfully. I know that a lot of people crap on it in our industry because, again, they'll crap on things that they don't know instead of educating themselves and learning. So I have done it successfully, but that's one thing that I feel, really gets a bad rap and has its place. It's not for everything, but it does have its place. But one thing I have noticed that I'm really not a fan of is the snake skin technique. That's what I call it. I don't know what else you want to call it, where they're doing the liney strokes all the way through to try to mimic, and it ends up looking like a snake skin.
Oh, okay, I understand.
I know what's going to happen in time. And this is the thing. And these artists come in and, their work looks absolutely banging right immediately after the procedure. But then what's going to happen in 5 years when that carbon molecule has spread in the skin and each one of those little dash marks has now become a blob? So the thing about, the finer needles that I love so much, I'm a big fan of the 0.25, the 1.5s and the 1.8s, is because even though we're doing this and it looks absolutely beautiful in the beginning, if you work shallow enough, when it starts to migrate over time, it's not going to be so large that we're in a, helmet situation, and with it fading enough over time, so we can add more and layer onto it. So I really am not a fan of this whole wispy, hairy, it looks great immediately. And I know it's a trend, but 5 years down the road, guys, you're going to be not very happy with those results. And I know this because I've been in the industry for 15 years and I've seen what pigment does in the skin. I mean, I've got, look, this used to be a Cecil and it was absolutely defined. And now it's like, 20 years later, and that pigment is migrated all together and you can't see any definition. It happens with brows, it happens with scalps, it happens with body tattoos. We know this, so stop trying to reinvent the wheel.
That's awesome. What was something that you know now that you wish you knew when you first started out?
One thing I knew now.
Something that you know now.
Don't use prenum. That was a big one. I would prenum all of my clients because I didn't want them to feel anything. But the prenum puts too much water into the epidermis and it causes those impressions to blur more in the skin. So that's just something that I learned over the years, is to not use prenum, and you get much, much better results.
Can you just one more time just say what you just said, what the prenum does to the skin?
So prenum has in it carriers. So even though we've got the lidocaine in there and, you know, sometimes epinephrine, there's carriers in it that are basically water or oil based. So these carriers, most of them are water soluble, will sit on the, like methicillin and all of those will sit on the skin, and it absorbs into the skin in that 15-20 minutes. So we're no longer working on a dehydrated, tight skin. We're working on a soft, mushy sponge. And it might look good immediately, but then as it sits in that mushy sponge for another hour while the skin completely dries out, it's going to start to seep. It's going to migrate a little bit. It's going to spread. It's water soluble. What do you do when you put pigment on a piece of paper and put water on it? It will still spread out like a water soluble, ink or a paint. It's the same thing with the skin. So, it will migrate to some degree. So working on a dry skin is much tighter. This is why they like to microblade with no prenum as well, because you get crisper strokes.
Understood. I did not know to that extent, but I knew to not use it from experience because I tried it. And for me, I don't know if what you just explained is what I'm gonna say with the water absorption. Was for me, it kind of looked like I guess in the paint world, it's called orange peel. It's like bumpy. Is that what it normally looks like? It looks like the skin just looks raised. It looks bumpy. At least that's what it did for me. It took that one time, and I was like, I'm never going to use this again.
No, but that sounds more like it would have been the condition of the skin opposed to the actual anesthetic itself. So the body, it sounded like the skin might have been dehydrated, and by in absorbing that hydration, it caused, a little puckering in the skin, where if those were the dehydrated areas, those areas would have swollen up a little more. So that's what sounds like might have happened there.
Well, it was enough for me to experience it once and say I'm never using it. Although I saw several other artists, experienced artists, saying just don't use it. But I just was like, you know what? Let me just try it just to see. And I don't want to say shame on me, but there are times that even some artists that are experienced put out information that's just quite not accurate. So I just was under the assumption that, you know what, maybe they haven't tried it and they're just passing it along because that's what they learned from their trainer. So I'm gonna give it a shot. All right, interesting, great. So I want to talk about needle variations and color pigments. Can you elaborate on that? What exactly, about the layering and needle variations?
So if you look at follicles under a microscope, anywhere from 1 to 16 follicles can grow out of a single hair strand. So out of a single follicle, like it's somehow will have compound follicles that grow out. So the follicle structure of the human head is very irregular. It's not consistent. This is why I cringe when I see these people do these, 3-point liner, and every single dot on the head looks the exact same. It just looks like a very minor leopard printy kind of, I don't know. It doesn't look natural. So natural is all about having the variations. So with my training, I always teach, you're going to go in on the first session because they want to see something, right? I'm going to go in with a lighter layer, a diluted layer, and then you're going to use a bigger needle. So you're going to start with a 0.3 or a 0.25. So that way they see something, but it's a soft version. Then as you progress your color, you're going to move to smaller needles so that you can darken your color, because you also don't know how the skin's going to respond to the pigment. You got dark pigment in there and it goes blue, and because it doesn't just go blue from depth, it goes blue from acidity as well. The pH of the body is very different, of the scalp is very different than the pH in the body, and that will also affect the color. So by working in the layers, you have the chance to be able to see how that color responds. Do I need to warm it up a little bit more? Like, did it cool too much compared to his current 5 o'clock shadow, like that blue band that he has? If we're dealing with that kind of blue band, I want to match it to that. And then from there, I go in with my next needle that's smaller and go darker. And then my final needle, which is the smallest, I'll sometimes go back into that first impression that's really light and add a dot in the center to create that 3D illusion.
Excellent. Now, I just want to let's stay on that, because there's such a big misconception when it comes to layering, and people have different interpretations of it. Some think that layering, and again, this is not just me, this is based off the questions that, you know, we've been getting, and a majority of them are a lot of new SMP artists. A lot of them under the impression that when we say layering, we just mean like session 1, that's 1 layer, session 2 layer, 3 layer. But the reality of it is, it's 1 session, right? And you come in with the second one, the second layer, like you are literally putting an impression on top of another impression to help bring it out more.
Yes, yes, yes.
Which way is the correct way to do SMP in terms of layering?
Well, again, I don't know if there's, well, one, I wouldn't layer in 1 session. You can't go in and do a light layer and then go in and do a dark layer in the same session. You don't do that. So layering is definitely about 1 session, let it heal. Then you come back. I like to vary the pigment, do another session, let it heal, see where that's at, then vary the pigment again and let it heal. And sometimes I'll throw in a little bit more of a warmer pigment just to have a little bit more variation if I'm seeing that it heals a little too cool for his skin. You know, carbon is not ideal for everybody, and you need to have that warmth in that pigment in order to deal with a lot of the different, you know, 1 to 3 Fitzpatrick scales. So I like to use the brown, micro dark brown. That's kind of one of my favorite pigments. And I use that a lot, and it's got a really good natural base, and it heals well, and it fades out of the skin well. And I do a lot of, like, I know this is kind of crazy, but I have tattooing here on my arm. And I do that so that I can watch and see how the pigments age over time. So this is going to be a great segue, because we absolutely need color pigments in the skin. We cannot do this on all Fitzpatrick scales with just carbon. It's too, it heals too cool with the undertones of the skin, because the undertones are already got that cool, that blue, that green. And once you add the pigment in and it ashes in the skin, it's going to resonate too cool. So you need that warmth in there in order to reflect the light through and make it look more natural.
Can you elaborate on what you mean by when it ashes in your skin?
Yeah, so all pigment over time, because it's gone into the dermal layer, right? We're in the dermal layer. We're not just in the epidermis. If it's in the epidermis, it's just going to fall out. So we are in the dermal layer, in the papillary layer that's between those 2 layers. That's our sweet spot, right? And then from there, the skin is going to heal over top of it. So think of it like if you have your black pants on and you put a nude pantyhose over top, it's going to make that black look more grayishy tone, right? So we always have to understand that once that skin heals over top of that pigment, it's going to have a bit of a more grayisher tone, because we've lost that crispness. So that's what ashing is when, and very similar to African Americans say, oh, my skin's ashy, it looks gray, then they put their cream on and it looks all fresh. It's the same type of thing. So that's what I mean by ashy. It will look ashy as it fades out.
Okay, thank you for that. And you were talking about warm and color pigments, and you know, for those that are listening who have only been trained and conditioned to believe that carbon pigment is the only thing that you can do, in regards to colored pigment and the newfound fad of adding orange to everything to balance out SMP. Let's go into that. And with
So the orange came out because Permablend built it in their scalp kit, and it was needed. We know that we need orange. Now, orange is made up of yellow and red, right? So let's not get too crazy with color theory here, because color theory is really basic. We've got blue molecules, we've got yellow molecules, and we've got red molecules. Then we've got our carbon black and our titanium whites. Basically, everything that we see in our color spectrum is made up of those 5 mineral colors. And then from there, we mix it. There's a lot going on right now in the industry about color. We need color. We need color in these pigments, because when the skin is translucent, we have light reflecting through. And when the light reflects through, it's going to reflect through that skin, and it's going to amplify those undertones, which is going to amplify the ashing, the bluing in that carbon. And so that is just normal. So with adding in the orange, which can be red or in yellow, whichever you want to, however you want to mix it, red and orange, and variations, there's different variations of the orange depending on what the undertone of the person is. So if somebody has a more blue undertone, they're going to need something with more of a red orange base, like a yellow red base. So it's going to be like a real pumpkin orange for a blue. But if somebody's got more of a greening, if they're greening in their heel, then they need more of that or a red orange base. So it has to be a bit more of the red side. So I think of it like Christmas. Christmas is red and green. Halloween is black and orange. Easter is yellow. What is it? Yellow and purple. So they all kind combine together to make neutrals. So by having the orange with that in the pigment, it helps to balance out so that you can create more of a brownish tone, and that brownish tone will resonate more natural in the skin. Now, secondary color theory is a whole nother thing that's being brought into the industry. We've got artists out there that are saying that you can't use just orange, but there's variations of the orange. And you have to have that in order to, it's the complementary color to blue. It's the only way to create a neutral. And this is fundamental color theory. You can take it into secondary color theory where at that point you're starting, we're going to use purple, or we're going to use, orange violet or orange matte, like orange or ochre. Like there's just different ways that the colors can be manipulated, but ultimately it's still an orange base. But you never want to just take an orange and throw it into a carbon. What will happen over time, because the minerals are very, very different and they're not balanced or harmonized in the mixture, what will happen is the orange will float to the surface, and you're going to see more of that and less of the blue, because the blue will sink down into the skin. The titanium comes to the surface and the blue fades down. So now you're going to start seeing a whole bunch of people running around with orange patchy, weird scalps. So you have to, in order to use color pigments correctly, first off, get educated in them. Learn color theory. It's not hard. You can, if you don't want to take a color theory class from an artist like myself, you can take a color theory, on YouTube and watch it. It's very basic. Color theory has not changed for millions of years. Reinventing the wheel is not going to make our industry any better. Complicating things is not going to make our industry any better. It's going to make people more confused. So I think, yes, we need to understand undertones. We also need to understand the limitations to carbon, how we can combine it, or maybe we're using black oxide. Maybe we're not using carbon anymore. Maybe we're going to use black oxide, and we're going to, I think this is more what I think Stevie G is doing. He's doing hybrids where he's mixing the carbon and the oxides, which is very similar to what Permablend did anyways. He's just refining it into that secondary kind of color wheels, scenario.
Yeah. We appreciate that mini color theory class. If you guys want some more information on that, feel free to hit up.
Did it make sense? Like it makes sense in my mind, but I don't know if my relaying it, is.
When I ask you, people like you, Stevie G, and Taryn this question, for a few seconds as you guys are explaining, I go into student mode, and I'm just like absorbing it, and I totally forget, like, hey, you're the host, you have questions. So I'm just like kind of like, oh, okay. Because the nonsense that's out there is just crazy.
Yeah. But Stevie G is right. Depending on what the base of the carbon, if you just take an orange and mix it in, you could end up developing more of a green color because there's too much yellow in the particular orange that you're using. So this is why you have to use what's been set out by the actual companies. So don't be taking PermaBlend orange and sticking it in 5 p.m. shadow. You are going to create a nightmare for yourself down the road like there's nobody's business, because depending on what the base of that black is it more of a blue base black? Is it a violet base black? Is it a green base black? Like all of these blacks, as we well know, all have different variations of color to the actual black. So mixing just a blanketed orange, no, you have to know the proper color correction in order to mix it to that correct color.
Excellent. And you've pretty much answered this question, but I'm going to pose it to you in the midst of your explanation. You kind of answered this question, but I'm just going to pose this question to you either way. And it's that some artists are able to achieve great results with just carbon black pigment and don't necessarily feel like they need to mix in colored pigments. Could it be because of their experience, or do you feel that every artist should be using colored pigments at some point?
I think if you're getting great results with what you do, don't change it, period. So if if they're getting great results with carbon, they're obviously working shallow enough. They're not going too deep, so they're working shallow enough. They're working soft enough so that it fades naturally over time. If it's not broke, don't fix it. You know what I mean? But if you're having problems and, you don't think it's your depth or, and carbon is not good for every Fitzpatrick scale. You can't use a carbon on a Fitz 1 or a 2. It's going to look too blue, even if you dilute it. You need that softness in there. You need that warmth in there for their skin tones. So, definitely learn color theory. I think every SMP artist absolutely should learn color theory for sure, so that they have a good understanding, because it will only make them a better artist with their clients. Because skin tone, even though the pigment carbon may not change, the skin tone from person to person will change. And some people have, more of a violet base. Some people have more of a yellow base. Some people are more green. Some people are more blue. And if you don't know how to modify that color you're using for that specific skin type, it's not going to look natural.
You're going to make it look, yeah. Got it. Yeah. So now I want to transition into, again, I know earlier we were talking about innovation and you not just being in that square, and you continue with that, with this technique that you have, and it's called manual SMP. And I remember seeing it a few months ago, and I've seen you, talk about, oh, you should try manual SMP, et cetera. And I was just kind of like, what exactly is manual SMP? And I was scared to ask, because as I spoke to you earlier, it was like, I don't want her to take this as I'm challenging, like this doesn't exist. What is it? Et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, what exactly is manual SMP?
Hey you guys, we are excited to share with you some very exciting news. We have created an online training platform that you can do in the palm of your hand.
With over 20 modules and nearly 80 lessons, this is the most comprehensive and detailed scalp micropigmentation course out there.
For those of you who can't travel here, maybe you're in other countries, you can now learn from your computer, you can sit at home, you can sit in a bus, and you can learn scalp micropigmentation with the greatest innovators in this industry.
Want to learn more? Click the link below.
It's just that. It's a manual SMP. It's a manual tool. You're taking a hand tool and a needle. I designed the needles, so the needles are specific to this technique, and it's just a hand tool, and it's based, people are assuming that it's a stick poke method, but it's not.
That's what I was under. That was my immediate
you're not
impression.
Sitting there jamming. There is a whole concept behind it,
yeah.
And there is a controlled technique to it, so that you can create variations within the look that you're going for. So you can customize it. So say you want one dot where it's going to be a little bit lighter, but then over here you want a dot that's going to be a little darker, or you want, you know, a more softer edge. Or if you have, I really created it out of necessity because I had a client come in and I lost power, and I had to do a patch test on him. So I just used a needle, and that's how it was literally born. But then I also, over time, I don't know if you, but I've got like serious ganglions in my wrist. So doing this wrist action repetitively for hours on end is just absolutely excruciating to my, and this is why I don't perform a lot of procedures now today, because I physically just can't handle it. I'm all for the training part, but the physical doing it anymore is killing me. So with doing this technique, because the process is so different, you're not doing this motion, so it's easier on your wrist. So what I would recommend for people to do, would you do a whole head with it? Absolutely not. But for patch tests, it's fabulous. It, you know, $5, you got your tool and your needle and you're done like that. You don't have to wrap it. You don't have to, like, super simple, super easy, mobile, no power needed, super convenient. So you just go in, do a few dots with your patch test. Then the clients can come back and heal, because I always recommend doing a patch test. You just never know how the pigment's going to respond in the skin. And then I would go in and do machine work generally, but then say for the 4th session, you know, or the 3rd session, they're coming back and we want to add a few more dots here in the front, or, you know, add some sparse spots throughout here. You can totally do it for that without having to wrap everything and, you know, use your expensive needles. And, you know, it's just easy, convenient, simple. You just pop it in and do a few dots. So that's how it was born. So working that I'm a manual artist, that I work, you know, microblade, and I've, you know, done shading manually and all of these things. It was just a natural progression to create a technique that you could do SMP with as well. So I train via Zoom, and I have artists in Italy, Ireland, South Africa, throughout the United States, here in Canada. And they're just people that want to learn a different way to do it, because they have risk fatigue and they needed to learn something else. So
now that's a technique that involves, I mean, it's a totally different, it's a totally different process that you now would have to learn as well too, right? So let's say me, right? Yeah, you know, the average SMP artist, and I say, you know, this is something I want to implement into, you know, my clinic. I now am dealing with a totally different kind of pressure, essentially, right? So this is
different beast.
This is something that's going to take some time to master before
my class is 6. We meet once a week for 6 weeks to take you through the basic of it. And we do some color theory, we do some pigment knowledge, we do, you know, all of that kind of stuff as well. I get you on mounds to be able to do this technique at home, and you show me there's ways that I can gauge whether you're too deep or, you know, not, and I go through all that. So I'm able to, you know, monitor you. You submit your homework, and I mark it, I critique it. I'm a very tough trainer. I don't just let things slide. If I think you can do better, I'll make you redo it again and do better. So, you know, that's why it takes 6 weeks to go through, and then you have a week of doing your homework, and then we convene again. I give you the next lesson, and then from there you ask me questions. So it does take time. It's not a, you know, a quick fix, you know, class, but it takes time. Even my SMP Essentials, my online class, that's a minimum of 6 weeks for you to complete it. Generally, I find most of my artists that are taking the class take anywhere from 3 to 6 months to complete it, because there's a lot of work.
Got it. Okay. Now, when before you even announced this technique, at any time were you thinking, you know, are my other colleagues gonna question my effectiveness about this? Or you?
If I can prove that it works and show that it works, then that's all that you need. So the fellow that I did in my demo, because I built a whole, anyways, there's a lot to this. There's a lot behind the story, but to this anyways. But yeah, I don't know if I have his picture. I don't think I can find it that quickly, but he's now 4 years out. I did him 2018. Oh my God, 5 years? Is it 5 years? And his scalp still looks good. It looks very similar to yours, very similar. And I used the perma blend. I used the brown, the darkest brown. It's aged beautifully with him. And it looks great. It took me 6 hours, but it was only one session I ever did on him.
And this was wow.
And it healed beautifully because you're controlling it. There's less pigment in each impression, less chance of migration.
Interesting. And you offer this as a training, as an online training.
Well, it's a Zoom training. I meet with you via Zoom. I've not yet put this online. I'm keeping this everything. I've had pretty much all of my ideas have been scooped over the years, as I have been so forthright to share them, and then people reinvent it and claim it as their own. So I've been really, really guarded with this baby. Just like I'm guarded with my new bi-blade. I'm just created a brand new hybrid blade for our industry. I'm so friggin' excited.
For the S&P industry?
No, for PMU.
PMU. Excellent. Awesome. I'm
so excited about that.
But yeah, I'm holding on to that. I don't want.
I know.
That's so shameful that you have to do that. It's like, yeah, I got something. Someone wants to come in, take it, say that.
Well, because all they have to do is learn the technique, and then they just decide to change the name of it. I mean, look how many beauty inks there are out there in the world. Like, people copy my shit all the time. I'm just like, whatever. At this point, I'm just like, just be safe. Just be safe. Practice, please. Safe practice. That's the problem. Too many people are not practicing safe practice.
And literally, the next series of questions that I wanted to ask you were regarding safety protocols. So we'll get right into that. I mean, how do you ensure your work environment is sterile and safe for S&P procedures?
Yeah, well, we'll never be sterile because we're not a hospital environment. We can be sanitized. We can do very strong safety protocols. So I'm just going to give you an insight of my safety protocol. From the moment the client walks through the door, I take all of their belongings and I hang them up, and then I sanitize my hands. I sanitize their hands. I give them a mask and I put booties on them. So that's just to come through my door. Their phones get decontaminated. Anything they touch, their ear pods all get wiped down. Everything gets wiped down. Then when they come into my space, all of the like armrests and stuff have all been sanitized and covered so that there's no fingers and hands cross-contamination. In my workstation, my bed is covered. I have a bed drape as well as the pillows being covered. All of my lamp, everywhere that is being touched on my lamps gets covered. Of course, my needles and my wrap and the cord is completely covered. None of this BS. Oh, we're just going to wrap a little, tape around the top and it's going to be fine. The whole cord is covered. My machine is covered. I always open the needle in front of the client so they're fully aware, mix the pigments in front of them, clean my bottles after each use. Even though I've, touched them with, clean hands, I still, make sure they're all wiped down. I give them full aftercare kit and instructions when they leave so that they know to not be touching it. Don't be putting their baseball hats on, that type of thing, so that they're protected personally, and give them instructions. I also have a pre-care and a post-care that the clients need to read prior to them coming in, and it's all part of my paperwork and my waiver so that it's signed, because the clients are responsible, for their well-being. I can keep it as safe here as possible, but as soon as they walk out the door, if they've just wiped their nose and touched their head, they could give themselves a really bad staph infection. Remember, staph lives in our nose, and that's where MRSA and all of those lovely bacteria like to harbor, and they're fine for us, but in open and attacked skin, they can create havoc on the body. So I think education is key. I keep up with my bloodborne pathogen training. I do them annually. Constantly. I think I've trained now 15. I have 15 certificates just in bloodborne pathogens, because I think it's so important that we keep our clients safe, period. We can do this till the cows come home. But if you're working dirty, wristbands, I see clients working or artists working with their big flashy watches on and all their bracelets. And if you're going to wear a bracelet, roll it all the way down and make sure it's completely covered. You know, if you can't cover your work, you shouldn't be having anything on, like no long sleeves, like all of that stuff. That's all important.
When you said the watch, I was gonna put myself out there because
Oh my
I
God.
do wear the watch, but I was gonna ask, I cover it. I was gonna ask, is it okay as long as you know,
Well, technically it's not okay. You shouldn't
take
be
it off.
Yeah, you should be taking it off, because if contamination got on there, there's no way you can clean it out of that band. We don't need to wear a watch when we're working. You know, the less you can have that's going to distract or cause any kind of cross-contamination. Even my glasses, I have to take my glasses off. I spray them all down. I cavity wipe them in front of the client, and then I put them back on so that they know, because, you know, if you have your glasses on and you're touching them a million times a day and you're not cleaning them prior to every client, then all that and cleaning them after the client. So once I'm finished with the client, I clean them again, you know, because this could be a form of contamination. You could be super safe, but then if you keep doing this and you're touching them from client to client, you got contamination all over your lenses.
Yeah, you know, I've been getting an influx of artists that are coming in here with SMP that results that they're not happy with, and something that is common practice for me. I like to, you know, I'll sanitize everything, but then for the most part, what I can, I like doing it in front of them. And a lot of them, for what I've noticed, the ones that are coming in here with bad SMP work, they almost all say, and I was putting a video together, my lawyer was like, you can't use that, it's not good. Of just create, you know, listening to them going, and again, these are clients that have bad SMP, and they were like, oh, you know, the person I went to didn't go to those extremes. Oh, why are you wrapping it? Like, my guy didn't do this, or he didn't have gloves. And and I'm kind of like, well, that's why you have shit SMPs. This guy clearly doesn't care, that he's not even willing to take care of you or himself by making sure, you know, that like just being hygienic. And I have like about 7 of them, 7 little clips where they're like, oh, my guy didn't do that. Oh, why are you doing that? What's that film that you're using on the, like, why are you doing
Right.
And like, you know, going to these artists that are not even doing that. They don't even realize, you know, what they're putting themselves at risk of.
No, but the clients don't know either. The clients don't know because nobody knows anything unless they're educated. And the problem with SMP, because it's an unregulated industry, people are not taking bloodborne pathogen training. They're just taking what they took in their, you know, class, and they're learning, oh, well, I can just put barbicide on that and it's fine. Like, they're not learning properly. And this is the disservice that we're doing to the clients. But back to the actual clients that you're dealing with, when clients come to me and they sing me a sob story, I'm sorry. I just was like, I'm like, you chose that artist. You chose that artist. Like, they can throw the person under the bus until the cows come home, and we can sit there and go, oh yeah, that was bad practice and this and that. But you know what? The client chose that artist, and they could have come to you in the first place, but they didn't. So I don't take a lot of people that have gone somewhere and badmouth. I'll actually, you know, go get them removed somewhere else and tell them when they want to, you know, have it redone, they can come and see me, because I'm not going to work on somebody else's schlock. And that person has already showed me red flags that they're not willing to do the work that's required to have it beautiful.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I would only, not all of them, I take the ones that I do take is, they're not botch work, but it's something that I could, you know, they just did a first session and they didn't like how it looks, hairlines off. So it's like, all right, I got it. But then to hear them going, oh,
Yeah.
you know, I never, you know, my guy didn't wipe this down, or he didn't add,
No.
you know, barrier tape to the machine. It's kind of like, and you didn't take that as a red flag, dude. Like,
they don't know. They only know what they know. I mean, you can go to the doctor's office and they don't even wrap the lights there. I mean, I went into my gynecologist's office and I was disgusted. I was like, you can't touch that light without cleaning it first. And she's like, oh, well, the nurses clean it all the time. I'm like, I can see the crud on there. That's not going near me. So, So they just don't, people don't know. They only know what they know. But the best thing we can do as an industry is educate. And also, you know, and you can see from these big flashy people that are out there. I mean, I see the big names. I see them showing off their fancy watches and their fancy cars, and oh, I'm making all this money. I'm like, oh, you're selling drugs on the side. But anyways, and they got their watches on, and they, you know, their bracelets and their gold chains, and they're hanging down, and the gold chains hanging down, and like, dude, clean that shit all up. Like when I work, I'm like pinned up and I got nothing on, and safety is our first and priority.
So you're not with the Jesus chain knocking on the back of the client's back of the head, giving him his confirmation?
No, not in the slightest. But I see it with girls too. They wear their hair down, it's hanging in front. You know, they don't have bed covers on. They don't even have a cover around the
film around the
on the
headrest.
guy's neck. And I'm like, you can just go through someone's Instagram and, you know, you can call it.
I've seen that, and not even with the leather type neck band. It's the material one. It kind of looks like a posturepedic foam, like a memory foam. And that doesn't even have. So to me, I'm like, dude, that's absorbing every single client's just the sweat.
Yeah. And they just think, oh, well, I'm going to wipe it with a cavity wipe face. And it's not. It's a porous material, so it's going to absorb everything that goes into it.
Obviously, something like that, practice like that, can lead to an allergic reaction. And sometimes even artists like us, that we do take measures to avoid that. An allergic reaction can, in fact, occur. How do you handle a potential allergic reaction or any other medical emergency that happens during an SMP procedure? And I ask you that question because I feel like that falls under safety protocols.
Yeah. Well, I fortunately, that's never happened to me. Allergic reaction is usually something that comes onset longer down the road. It's not an initial. Usually if it's an initial reaction, it could be the aftercare or the anesthetic. Pigments usually need time in the body for the skin to start attacking it and going after it. So you would notice, you know, more of a reaction 6 months or a year down the road if the skin's, you know, tender to the touch, swollen, you know, lumpy, that kind of thing. That usually shows discolored, inflamed. And at that point, you would have to probably calm down the inflammation by seeking medical attention. They may need some steroid shots or that type of thing, but ultimately would be needing to remove that pigment from the skin. And generally, you won't see a lot of that happening with straight carbon. When it will happen is when there's more carriers. It's the binding agents that could be in it, or the carriers. If somebody's allergic to propylene glycol, that's a carrier. Or if they're allergic to rosin, which could be a carrier. Those are more of the ingredients that would cause a type of reaction or an allergic reaction.
Got you. And now, what advice would you give to SMP artists who are looking to maintain the highest levels of safety and hygiene in their clinics?
Right off the bat, get your bloodborne pathogen training and get it from a reputable company. Don't just go and take, you know, a quick, you know, Red Cross one. Like, take it from an actual tattoo company that's built it. There's a good one. What's the one that I like is the Body Art Training Group. The Body Art Training Group is a really good one. And I put that as that is part of my fundamental training. So the first thing they do when they come into my training is they take their 4-hour class. And I don't do it with them separately because I want to be able to stop and start and explain why and this and that. And then we start showing setup and breakdown. So it's really fresh in their brain and programmed that I need to be OCD about all of this stuff. So I think training is where it's at. We just need to train, at least train once a year. Your clients are worth it. It's an investment in you. It's an investment into your business, and it's an investment into your future. If you do have issues, you need to have a policy and a procedure booklet. So you have to have some kind of booklet that's going to state when the client came in, so that you're going to need this for your insurance, because this person that has an allergic reaction could come back to you on your insurance, and the insurance is going to want to have a full documented, you know, course of what it all happened. When did you talk to them? What did you say? You know, all of this is important. So it have that and update it regularly.
Yeah, outstanding. Shauna, before we wrap things up, can you just let everybody know where they can contact you? What if you have any training that's going to be coming up, all that good stuff?
So I'm currently accepting client or students on my fundamental training for S&P Essentials. All of this is on my link tree at my Beauty Inc. So I am the original at and then Beauty Inc. Now it's a picture, a face of me because too many people are copying my logo. So it's just a picture face of me with Beauty Inc. And you can reach me there. That's the best way to reach me because that's where I can chat with people around the world. I do try to, I have students at a different time zone and I'll stay up sometime at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning and chat with them so that we can correspond. So I try to be very good about getting back to people, but my website is beautyinc.ca, just BEAUTYINK.ca. I have very basic amounts of information about my training on there as well. Unfortunately, as soon as I post things, it gets copied. So I have then had to learn. I used to have my full curriculum on there and then on my S&P Essentials, and it totally got jafted. So yeah, I'm happy to share. I'm an open book when I'm one-on-one with someone. I will help people until the cows come home, but I'm very guarded as to what I put out into the world now. And it's just sad because unfortunately people, they copy your stuff and it's as simple as that.
Yeah, that's such an unfortunate thing. But that's a good practice of how you do it. Just give them very minimal and then let them give you a shot.
Yeah, I used to be all about giving it all away. I was.
Yeah, you got to be very
I just gave it all away until they built up enough to then just take it and run. And
yeah.
it's happened with my needles. It's happened with my training. It's happened with my name. It's happened with my whole reputation. I've had companies that have sucked me in, brought me to their conferences because I'm a CPCP trainer. I hold clout. They promote till the cows come home, and then they've used my my likeness and my voice and manipulated it and edited it to make it sound like I was saying something totally different. So it's crazy what people will do in this industry. There's no links of it. So
we're not safe, Shauna. We're not safe.
No. Oh my God. I've had a cyber stalker since 2017 that's been attacking my business on a monthly basis. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's
it's crazy.
I'm sorry that you even having to go through that.
It's yeah, we can go for a whole nother talk about that one.
Yeah, which brings me to this. Like, I know there were several topics that I wanted to discuss with you, and I know this could have easily turned into a 2-3 hour podcast, but in consideration for your time, we'll leave that for another one. But I do want to thank you for taking out some time from your busy schedule to jump on the podcast and talk to us and give us some knowledge, bring us up to speed on the things that you've experienced as S&P has evolved, and bring some light to your manual S&P technique, which I was under the assumption, I was like, wow, if she can do a whole scalp, like literally banging.
Oh yeah.
I was like, God bless that woman.
Yeah, no, I can do a whole scalp. I mean, that's what I did. I did the whole scalp, but it takes a long time. But I mean, you can do it in 6 hours and you can still have your wrist at the end, which is really nice.
Yeah.
But one thing we didn't talk about though, just to talk, I want to ask you a question. What do you think about these new machines coming out of China that are tick, 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 tick?
Okay, so I don't know if you saw, I did do a podcast with one particular company. Now, I think they are incredibly innovative, but they need some tweaks before they can be effective for what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Once they get those tweaks fixed, I think it's gonna revolutionize the way we do S&P.
Yeah, I think so too. And they've got to make the machine small enough and safe so we can cover them as well.
It's a combination of that, and then just the cartridge itself with the dragging. It works well with someone like me who's willing to buzz their hair down. But now what do we do with a density client? And,
that was
and I, and I tried it, you know, I told the brand, I was like, listen, I'm going to try this needle on, I'm going to try this equipment on at least about 5 or 6 clients. And what was funny was even some of the clients, when they came in and they saw the machine, they were looking at it. They were like, what is that? Because, you know, they're doing their research now for the most part. Some of them are. So they know, they was like, I've never seen a contraption like what the hell is that? So for me was the dragging of the hair for the density. I thought there were way too much moving parts, which in theory they sound good, like they are helpful, but it breaks away your concentration. You know, sometimes you really get in that zone to then have to stop, look at this big, you know, like a VHS looking thing and make adjustments to it and then come back. Like I just didn't want to deal with that. But I could see once they finalize those tweaks, I think 2 things. It'll be good for artists like us that, you know, we respect the industry, but then it's also going to be a bad thing for artists who are just, I'm sorry, not artists, but for people that are looking to come into the industry, because they already think now that S&P is easy to do. You know, if you don't know any better, I mean, you yourself, when you first were introduced to it, you're like, oh, absolutely, I can do this. It's just dots. And then as you pursue it, you realize, holy shit, like, no, this involves understanding a technique. I think that'll also open another door for a wave of more people who are now S&P artists. And it's just like, they're just dragging these pens on scalps and just destroying them. And from the looks of it already, you can see some of these manufacturers, the videos that they're posting, like that's pretty much some of them are doing now. They're just like going back and forth.
Yeah.
On some of these.
Well, at least it's not the roller, the MPM roller. Oh my God. You might be too old or young for that, but there was MPM was a company that came out with this dermal roller that you rolled the pigment in and rolled it. Oh my God. The insane. Oh, it's just so sad what it did.
Last September, I had a doctor from Oklahoma who flew out here, and he had a botched procedure. And when I asked him, you know, who it was that did it, and he explained to me what it was, I was just like, I can't believe that he even. And again, this was a doctor.
Yeah, I know. Pizza cutter.
You wouldn't even imagine that. Yeah, and
they tried to get me. They had an office here in Vancouver, and they had me come in, and they were all excited, and they wanted me to show it and promote it because of, you know, my place in the industry and da 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 da. And I went to their office and I tried it, and I was like, no, this is not for our industry. This is going to damage people. And they were like, oh no, it's fabulous. I'm like, no, this is not how you do it. And sure enough, you know, you see 3-4 years later, just bad. And where are they now? They're gone.
Unheard of. Yeah, it was the same thing with me with the, you know, the automatic machines. And I was like, I don't want to compromise, you know, my word now with that. I didn't think it was enough. And I also thought the price point was a little much.
Okay. I don't know how much they were. Where were they asking? Like
almost about $6,000.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
No,
$6,000. The needles were incredibly expensive. And then that's another thing that at least with the company that sent me theirs, you know, we're used to, all right, we need to refill, dip, do our thing. Now you got to stop, take pigment, put the to the side where they have this port, and then you got to squeeze pigment in. And to me, it was like, okay, but what about you diluting the pigment? Like how does this work with the dilution, or if you're adding other colors into it? Like you can't just stop and try and pull this in. Yeah, it was just a little too much. They're there. Once they figure it out, I think it'll be great for artists like us.
Well, I guess we have lots to look forward to, right? We got new pigments coming. We've got new innovations in needles. We've got, I mean, like, I'm just, so much. Our industry, it's going to continue evolving in the next 5 years. And, you know, hopefully we'll still be relevant.
Yeah, I was going to say, hopefully we'll still be around.
Yeah. So, well, thank you so much, David. This has been such a fun adventure going down this road. I'm happy to share and always talk. You know, this industry has been my life's passion. I walked away from my, you know, film career just after I received my Emmy honors because I got called to do this, and the force that's driven me has been exponential. You know, I love this industry. I love doing the work that we do. I don't know if I like the industry so much anymore. It's changing too much, and it's too unregulated, but I love the work that we do, and I love being able to empower and give confidence to people, you know, with artistry. So it's a magical thing, and we're all so incredibly blessed to do this work.
Yeah, for sure. And hopefully we can get you back on for round 2. You know, we got some more things that we needed to cover. But for now, guys, that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Again, thank you to Shauna Magrath for coming on. And we appreciate you, Shauna, again. Until the next time, peace.
Thank you. And thank you, David, and continue to elevate the industry with education and knowledge and promote safety. So thank you. Thank you.
I will try my absolute best. Thank you.
So feel me rain from behind. Black rain, black rain. Peace students in the game, black rain. Through the struggles and the strain, black rain. Elements of mine. So feel the rain from behind, black rain. Peace students in the game, black rain. Through the struggles and the strain, black rain. Elements of mine. To feel the rain from behind. I'm sorta like a killer devil rebel. The getaway cars are the sounds of the bass and the treble. Cause I get into mine able and ready.